This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I can see your screen.
Yeah, this is the Excel sheet that I made based on what you have told on that day. Like the stakeholders that will be using the recruiting system will be the HR team, project managers, employees, that is the internal employees, then the recruiting agency, and the interview panel people, that is who's taking interviews, then the final candidates who got selected.
Okay, candidates actually. Okay, right,
So
right. So,
these are the stakeholders.
okay, cool. Yes.
Then these are the purpose of each stakeholders, why they are using the system. Like the HR team mainly use the system to post the job internally, then to view the profile of the internal applicants that who have responded to the job opportunity. Then they can use the system to compare the profile of the internal candidates and the proposal. That's because the HR team doesn't know that to which job they have applied. So there'll be an option in the recruiting system that they can see the side by side the profile of the candidates as well as the proposal.
Okay.
Then they can use the system to access the inquiry screen, that is to see the database profiles that is available. Then they can also use the system to post the job externally, then to view the profile of the external applicants, then also to after taking the interviews of the candidates, like the phone interview, they can input the feedback through the system. Then when a particular candidate is being selected, they can release the offer letter. So these
Okay,
are
cool.
the purpose of using the HR team, like why they
Yeah.
use the system. Yeah,
Okay.
then like that, the project managers have some roles, like they can create the proposal and submit the proposal through the system. Then after that, when they get the feedback from the HR team, they can see the shortlisted candidates, their profiles. Then also view the feedback about like once the interview team has done the interviews, they can see the feedback about the candidate. Then also they have an options to accept or reject the candidate according to the feedback. That's what the project managers do with the recruiting system. Then after that, we have an employee. That is for the internal employees. They can view the job posting. Like it's mainly in read-only format. When the automatic email system works, they will get an email. They can see the job posting. Then also they can apply or submit their profile for that particular job if they want to. Then there is a recruiting agency. So for the recruiting agency, they will get some temporary ID or something to access the recruiting system. And if they find out if any particular candidate, they can upload the details of the candidate into that recruiting system. Then that's what a particular recruiting agency does with the system. Then we have an interview panel. So what the interview panels does is that they will do the interviews and they will upload the feedback of a particular candidate into the system so that the project managers can view about the candidates. Then after that, the candidates who have been selected, they will also get a temporary ID. They can enter the education details and their personal details into the system.
Okay. Right. Right. Thanks, Divya. So I'll just once we look at all the others what they have done.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll speak about it. So what you have done, and I'll give the feedback. So after looking at the other ones. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Mommy, is it open with you? Shall I give you presenter access?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Mommy, I made you presenter. Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, so purpose is not very detailed with me. I just wrote there the users. So the
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders I thought I could think of is project sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
So they are paying for the project, so they will be also responsible for the site, the system. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and the project manager, he's managing the
Mm-hmm.
project, so directly, indirectly, all the time, he will be the user of the system. Then the employees, it's the same. Then the HR team, then subject matter expert. Then I could think of IRS as well because they might be using that site for tax purpose and stuff. Then the IT team, and job applicants. Then
Mm-hmm.
the recruiters and benefits and insurance team of the company, who will be
Mm-hmm.
hiring people. So the the purpose of all these people will be like for example IT, they will develop and maintain the project, so they're also stakeholders. Then
Okay.
yeah, so I wrote this way. I mean, not in very details the purpose. I just put it
So,
there.
Mommy, do you see any difference the way you presented and the way Divya presented the same things? And what is the difference if you see any?
The requirements, the purpose was I just made a point kind of. It was not detailed.
Mm-hmm. So obviously we are talking about the stakeholders because they are like somewhere or the other they involved in using the
Mm-hmm.
application, right? So
Yeah.
it is not very much specific to project manager or HR or employee. Everyone is using. That's why they are there on the left hand side under stakeholders. So when I say the purpose, right? So the
Yeah.
purpose of each user using the system. Why do it? So if I ask you a question, like why do you use internet banking application? So do you say that, okay, I use it because I have a banking account? Or do you
Mm-hmm.
say that, okay, I use it for transferring of the funds, I use it for
Yeah.
withdrawing, I use it for checking the account statement, I use it for making my utility bill payments, I use it
Yeah.
for making the credit card payment, etc. So will you say what would be your answer?
Yeah. The second one, I will say what are the
Yeah,
uses of the system? What
yes,
do I
right.
do with the system? Yeah. Yes.
True, right? Yeah.
I
So
get it.
the way that Divya has presented, so obviously she identified the IT team and IT team subject matter experts. They are the stakeholders when we look
Mm-hmm.
at from the perspective of system development activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are not talking about the system development right now. So we are trying to understand who are the end users for the system,
Okay.
who are the actual end users of the system. See, once the system is developed, will the IT team use it for any purpose?
They will
Business
be.
purpose. No
Okay.
business purpose. I'm saying. So they will, if there is any technical issue or anything, they will sort out the issues. That's a different story. That is a support activity. So do they use it for any business purpose?
No.
So you and the subject matter experts, do they use it?
No, I just thought from the point of view of stakeholders who will be
Yeah.
involved with the system.
Okay, so the stakeholders that I also told you that. So the stakeholders does mean here the users of the system. Not exactly like when we develop a system, the stakeholders are going to be like a wider group. So in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that your sponsor, your the subject matter experts, your IT team, we will take the inputs from them and the development team will develop the system, and the BA will understand the requirements and document the requirement by considering the inputs from the sponsor, then the subject matter experts and all these people. Okay, so that's during the development act. But here, the whole idea is to understand from the end user perspective who are the users and why they want to use the system. So is it
Okay.
clear now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, right.
Mhm.
Kanu, I'm making you presenter, so just share your screen.
Kiran, I don't have my regular laptop with me. Can
Okay.
I send it to you
So,
later, or can I share it tomorrow? If that's okay.
so if you have it okay, so you have done it in you have done it in a different laptop. Okay, fine, no
Yeah,
problem.
I don't
You
have
can
my
share it with
regular
me
laptop
later.
with me.
Yeah, okay, no issues at all. So let me share my screen. I haven't opened anything. Okay, but anyway, Divya, so you have done it really well. I mean, I could see that most of the things are in line with what we discussed, and also you put it. The best thing that you have done is what are the purposes that you identified. So Divya, I'm making you presenter once again. Just share your screen and show us. Just give me a moment. Yeah, I'm making you presenter. Just show your screen and show us like what you have done. So we'll quickly go through that, review it once again. Okay. So could you please maximize that one a bit? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kanu and Momi, can you see the screen? You see what Divya is sharing?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. So now the question was who are the stakeholders, right? Stakeholders in the sense who are the users of the system, right? So we talked about the different user groups through the workflow. So ideally, flowchart. I defined everything through the flowchart to make the things easier. It could have been done in a simple textual format. But if it is a textual format, the problem is there are multiple conditions. If your profile is not suited, the profile of the internal employees, we need to go ahead with the profiles in the database. And if the profiles of people in the database are not suited, then we need to go with the external job posting. So that means that there are multiple alternatives are there even during the selection activity. So the person can be selected or rejected. The person can accept the offer or reject the offer. There are multiple if else things, right? So if you have to put it in a textual format, it becomes clumsy. We may not be able to understand the things easily. So that's where the flowchart is used. So nothing to do with the flowchart, just that there are two purposes. One is to make the things easier, to understand things easier, the diagrammatic representation always sensible, and especially when there are multiple conditions. That is one. And second one, so the use of Microsoft Visio, that being one of the tools that we use for any diagrammatic representation. So it's up to you whether you leverage that tool while you are writing your requirements or you put it in a textual format. No one is going to question you that why are you using the diagrammatic representation. No one will question you. If you are putting in a textual format also, no one is going to question you. But then how best, so ultimately it has to be understandable for everyone. Okay, so that's where the flow chart, like I have spoken about, discussed about the system related requirement or case by using a flow chart. So the question was to understand all the stakeholders which we talked about and their purpose of using the system. Why do we need to understand the purpose of a system? So the purpose of using a system, why do we need to understand the various user groups? So obviously, like when we want to develop a software application, it has to be developed for the sake of a set of end users or group of end users of the system. So in order for us to develop a system, we need to know why we are developing it. What is the purpose we are going to solve? What is the purpose we are going to solve by developing the system? So that's when we need to understand who are all the people who use this particular system and why they use the system and why they use the system. So obviously, like if you see here, HR team, so one of the major users of the recruitment application. So as Divya listed, I could see all of these purposes, all of these things can be achieved by the HR team by using the software application. All of these can be achieved by using the software application. The HR team would use it for posting the job internally. The HR team would use it for viewing the profile of the internal applicant. So basically, whoever is applied, the employees, so they can view the profiles which are uploaded against a job ID and compare the profile of the internal candidates and the proposal form. So compare the profile of the internal candidate against the
Hello.
hello. Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Right. Okay, so for one purpose is just whenever an employee applies for a job posting, so employee or any person, so HR can open the profile and they can compare with the proposal form submitted by the project manager side by side. They can see whether the candidate has the required skill set or not. So that is one other thing. Access inquiry screen to screen the database profiles. Yes. So as I mentioned clearly that so earlier we used to depend upon the database team, especially when there was no system, and we used to ask them that okay, these are the keywords. Can you please search for the profiles and provide us the profiles? But for now, so we are providing a screen for the HR team, and they with that screen should be able to search for the profiles which are there in the database and check the profiles which are there in the database, and so that the moment you get the profiles again you can compare side by side whether the profile is suited for the requirement or not. And then posting the job externally, so once if none of the profiles are suited, the other option is to post the job externally. So these are all independent things, not necessary that for every job opening you have to look for the internal people. For every job opening you have to look at for the profiles in the database. So there are some requirements which needs the internal people, which may look for the internal people. For example, I need a Java developer and my company has 10,000 people. So obviously there are chances that there may be someone or the other who is a Java developer who would like to look out for the project change or something like that. In that case, obviously I will try to post it internally. But I need something like Scala or something new technology, or maybe a C++ developer. And I know that those C++ developers are there. They won't be like they'll be in project and in project related requirements. So obviously in that case, what I do, I'll directly post the job externally. I'll not be waiting until, and there may be a urgency, right? So I don't need so I may not get enough time to actually look for the internal people and the database people, which may consume time. So that's when I may need to post it the job externally. So these are all the independent things again. So based on the need, we use it. But definitely when we develop the system, all these things need to be covered. So that's where you remember these things. So once you get into the project or whatever. So when we need to address the needs of the stakeholder, make sure the needs of all the stakeholder groups. So for all the different possible alternative cases, possible alternative cases are addressed. Are addressed. So I don't see anything from the HR team perspective. So I see that every purpose that is listed out here is sensible and up to what we discussed during the discussion. And coming to the project manager, create the proposal and submit the proposal. Yes, The absolute purpose, when they have a resource requirement for a project, they log into the system, they click on create proposal, and the proposal form will open, and they enter all the details and submit. Then view the shortlisted candidates along with the feedback from the HR team. Yes. So once the HR does the screening activity, any profile is shortlisted. So what do? They will put in the screening feedback and submit. What HR will do? They will put in the screening feedback and submit. The moment they submit, automatically that will be visible, that will be notified to the project manager, and the project manager can see the shortlisted profiles. They should be able to see the shortlisted profiles and view the feedback about the candidate from the interview panel. So that means that, so whenever the interview team, the panel does the interviews and they put in the feedback, the project manager should be able to view the feedback of the candidates. So what was the feedback for interviews level 1? What was the feedback for the screening feedback, and so on. Accept or reject the candidate according to the feedback. So ultimately the project manager has the final say whether to accept or reject the profile. So that's when the project manager will have a checkbox kind of thing. One checkbox is to accept, the other checkbox is to reject, or maybe a radio button. Either they can choose one, accept or reject, or select or reject. The moment they select, they need to put in the comments, valid comment. The moment they reject, then also they need to put in the comments why they are rejecting the profile. Coming to the employee, so employee view the job posting in read-only format. So whenever there is an internal job posting, they can open the application. They can see all the internal job postings in read-only format. So if they are interested to apply for a job, so there should be an apply button. So they should click on apply and submit their profile. Basic details they need to enter, and they need to upload their resume. So recruitment agency. So the recruitment agency is the consultancy, the external consultancy. So what do? So they are given a temporary ID and password. With the temporary ID and password, they'll be able to access all the job postings which are assigned to them. For example, I need a Java developer, and I need a .NET developer, and I need a business analyst, and I need a tester. And there are n number of such roles, maybe 10 developers, 10 .NET developers, and 5 Java developers, and 2 BA people, and 3 testers or whatever. So I have assigned these profiles to the external recruitment agency XYZ. So what do? They log into the application, the recruitment system, and they should be able to see all these job IDs. And if at all, if they find a suitable profile, they open the job ID and they submit the profile. So that's how the recruitment agency is going to use it. So they should be able to view the job IDs, job descriptions, and all that, and they should be able to upload the profiles against the job ID. And interview panel. So when we talk about the interview panel, so they are the ones who generally conducts the technical rounds of interview, maybe 1 round or 2 rounds of interview. And once the interview is over, so they should be able to put in the interview feedback. So input the feedback of the candidate after the panel has done the interview process. So based on the interview process is done, they should be able to put in the feedback. And then the candidate by himself or herself, they would use the system to upload the employment details, educational details, and the personal details. Employment details, educational details, and the personal details. They should be able to upload to the system. That's how the various user groups would be using the system, and those are all the different purposes for which they would be using the system. And there will be a database team who will be accessing the system for giving the right permissions. So why only project manager should be able to submit the proposal form? How do we control it? So obviously the database team will give the permissions. So they will give the permissions to the project manager, so that they are the ones who are only be able to submit the proposal form. Why only HR be able to submit the jobs internally? Why can't the employee? So how is that controlled? Obviously through the permissioning mechanism. We need to have the permissioning mechanism to be able to make sure that whether the person is the right person has the right access or not. So that needs to be handled by the database team or the database admin. They can also be one of the user. And coming to the employee, one other thing that we could add is employee referral process. So when we talk about the profiles in the database, so we talked about the something like the employee referral process. So the person, you should be able to refer any candidate. So any candidate who has the required skill set or whatever to our organization, So we will use the system, this particular system, to refer a candidate for a particular job ID. So that anyway, as part of the workflow, we didn't discuss, but we talked about the employee referral process. So that's where we can link both the things and understand that. So as part of the employee responsibilities are probably employee while using the system, they can also use the system to upload the profiles as part of the employee referral process. So that's pretty much the needs that we need to understand from the different users perspective. So once we understand it, when we develop the system, we have the clarity that okay, these are the people, these are the purposes. Then we can brainstorm, we can talk to the technology team, we can talk to the other stakeholder to understand in detail how these people are going to use the system, or how best we can develop the system in order to be able to serve all these purposes. Okay, is it clear so far? Any questions?
So Kiran, you mentioned about the database team. Shouldn't that be part of the support system, since they would probably come into play once the candidate has been hired? Or is that to do with the pool of candidates that you have currently?
Okay, so the database team, so we need to understand here. So whenever we develop any system, right? Any system to take, we don't need to name any specific thing. But
Okay.
if we take any system, we will have the different user groups, right? So that means that if you take a banking software, for example, so we are the customers of the banking software. That means we have the bank account, we use it the bank account for the different purposes. We may be having corporate bank account, we may be having a retail bank account, we may be having international banking account, can be anything. So again, so in our customer group itself, there are three different users, right? Corporate banking, retail banking, international banking. Similarly, the same software is used by the branch manager and the bank employees, that is like personal banker, help desk teller. They all also use the same system, right? So when we develop this system and when we handed it over to the bank, like for example, XYZ Bank, we developed the software. So we are implementing in their systems this software. So while implementing, how do we control their access, right? So in that case, the database team must know that what are the different roles, and based on their roles, these people will give the permissions, right? So they are also the users of the system and they control the access. And they maintain the database. For example, there are transactions, right? There will be hundreds and thousands or millions of transactions that are done across the globe for a banking application. All that needs to be maintained in the database. All that needs to be there. And anytime the data recovery needs to be done, the data backup data need to be replayed again for some transaction which is not matching properly or correctly. So obviously the database team will come into picture and they replay the data. Anything to do with the data, they will replay the data and see that if there is any transaction which is like having any concerns for the customer or whatever. So that way, so the database team is also one of the users. They will be active users of the system to maintain the accesses for the different user groups, and to also make sure that the database related management activities are done for any software application. So that's where the database team will be there. And if you take any user here, HR team, project manager, employee, all these people will start involving only after the software is developed, right? They will start using the system only after the software is like up and running, right? Till that point of time, they'll do it manually, like how they are doing it right now. So even during that point of time, along with all these user groups, the database team also becomes one of the user groups to the respective software application. Is that clear?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So any questions so far? Anyone? Momi, is it clear so far?
Yes, Kiran, thank you. Yes.
Okay, right. So now quickly go on to discuss about the use cases. So use cases is a way of writing down the requirement. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen? Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So in simplest way, the use cases is a template with which the user should be able to write down the requirement. A use case specifies the behavior of a system or a part of a system and is a description of set of sequence of actions that the user performs to see the observable behavior. A use case specifies the behavior of a system or a part of a system and is a description of set of sequence of actions that the user performs to see the observable behavior. So that means that in a use case, we will be putting down step-by-step sequence of actions that the user would be doing on the system to achieve some objective. So what is the format or template of a use case? So now when we look at the template of a use case, it will have the name of the use case. Name of the use case in the sense, name of the requirement. So now whatever that we have identified, whatever Divya has listed out, whatever you have worked on, those are all the requirements of a system. I put it down as a purposes, but those are the requirements for which a user will use the system, for which each user would be using the system. So if you put down in the form of a requirement, those are all the requirements. Now for a requirement, so in order to detail, you need to use you'll be using a use case format. So when you talk about a use case format, it has the name of the use case. Then we have the actor or the actors who would be using the system. You have the trigger. So actors are nothing but what? Anyone who is going to involve with the system with regards to that particular requirement, which is mentioned under the name, that person will be called as an actor. Or actors, there may be multiple people who would be using a particular functionality. So in that case, we will put the multiple user names under the actors. And then you have the trigger. So what is meant by trigger? So trigger would be the starting point for a use case. Trigger would be the starting point for the use case. So what would initiate the use case? What would trigger the use case? So when we talk about the trigger, examples here, customer reporting a claim. So once the customer reporting a claim, what will happen? It will initiate the claim processing activity. It will trigger the claim processing activity. So for example, our requirement that we are handling is claim processing. So in that case, what would be the trigger? Customer reporting a claim is the trigger. Customer reporting a claim is the trigger. And then customer insert a card into the ATM machine. So that's a trigger. So for what? It may be cash withdrawal. It may be balance inquiry. It may be doing a funds transfer from one account to another account. So the trigger is customer inserting a card. By inserting a card, it will facilitate maybe the funds withdrawal, maybe the funds transfer, maybe balance inquiry or mini statement or whatever. So you should be able to like do all the transactions here. So the trigger would be the starting point for the use case. And then we have one more entry, that is precondition. And what does precondition talks about? The precondition is what should be the condition of the system before running the use case? What should be the condition of the system before running the use case? For example, that is precondition, we can also put it as prerequisite. Prerequisite. In order for us to use the system, is there any prerequisite? Do we need to have valid account? Do we need to have, like, if you want to transfer the funds from your account to someone's account, you need to have enough money in your account, without which you will not be able to transfer. Without which you will not be able to transfer. So that way, user should be having valid account. That's one precondition or prerequisite. User should be having enough money in their account. That's one other prerequisite. If you're trying to save the file to the hard disk, there should be enough disk space. You're trying to save the large file of like 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes maybe. So you should be having enough disk space to store the data. So the prerequisites are, before the use case is executed, what are the expectations, what are the preconditions that are mentioned under the precondition section. Then we have the post conditions. The post condition is the outcome of the use case. It is the outcome of the use case. That means that once we run the use case, what would be the expected outcome? What do we want to see? What is the behavior that we want to see? If you're trying to transfer funds, money should be transferred. If you're trying to log into a system, that means if your use case is to log into the system, the expectation is that by doing all the steps, you should be able to log into the system. If you're trying to save the file should be saved to the hard disk. The file should be saved to the hard disk. So then minimal guarantee cases. Minimal guarantee cases are nothing but, sometimes, though we expect the system to be functioning as per the post condition, sometimes we may not be able to achieve that. The reason being, the system may not be developed completely. The system may be working partially. So because some of the steps may not have been implemented, may not have been developed, or under development. In that case, you can't expect the successful outcome, but you can expect that a minimal guarantee outcome. Oh, okay. So the last step may not be successful, but the expectation is that what is the minimal things that system can promise, holding even when the use case execution ended in failure? The complete use case is a failure, but what is the minimum expectation? Okay, let's say there are 10 steps in a use case. Launching the application, log into the application, select the beneficiary and all that. Like that, there are 10 steps. Out of 10 steps, you know that it can be only successful until step 8 or 9. 10th step cannot be possible. Why? Because that is not yet developed. So if it is not developed, you can't expect it. So the step 10, whatever is there, that may be developed in the next release cycle or next iteration. Next release cycle or next iteration. So obviously, in that case, you can't expect it to work 100%. But there is something called as minimal guarantee case. Oh, up to step 9 should be successful. If not step 10, up till step 9, it should be successful. So that becomes a minimal guarantee case. That becomes a minimal guarantee case. So minimal things a system can promise, holding even when the use case execution ended in failure. Money is not transferred unless authorization is granted by the user. Unless authorization is granted by the user, money would not be transferred. So that means that you are transferring the funds, and the last step is saying that the authorized user should authorize the transaction, which is not happening. So that is, if you are getting that error, that means that your minimal guarantee case is a pass, something like that. Success guarantee case. So if all the steps are developed and up and running, what is the expectation? The file should be saved if your requirement is to save the file. If your use case is to transfer the funds, money should be transferred to the beneficiary account. Money should be transferred to the beneficiary account. So that way, when we talk about the post condition is the outcome of the use case, and it can be a successful outcome. It can be a minimal guarantee outcome. So what would be the post condition that needs to be defined in a use case? That needs to be defined in the use case. There is something called as success scenario. So what is meant by success scenario? This is the main storyline of the use case. So when you are defining the use case, the main point is the success scenario. Now, if you see, this is our template where you have the name, actors, trigger, precondition, post-condition, and success scenario. So the success scenario is the main storyline of the use case. It is written under the assumption that everything is okay, no errors or problems occur, and it leads directly to the desired outcome of the use case. It is written under the assumption that everything is okay, no errors or problems occur. Everything is directly leads to the desired outcome of the use case. Desired outcome of the use case. It is composed of sequence of action steps. It is composed of sequence of action steps. So a success scenario is composed of sequence of action steps. So let's look at an example which makes things quite easier. There is a requirement. The requirement is that the user should be able to add a product to the shopping cart. That's our requirement. The user should be able to add a product to the shopping cart. So whenever you are purchasing products online, you will first add it to the shopping cart, right? So that's the requirement. User should be able to add a product to the shopping cart. So the precondition is that the system is already launched. The prerequisite system is there already. You don't need to launch it again. Now, coming to the success scenario, step 1 says that the user enters a keyword and click on search. In order for you to buy a product online, for example, I need a washing machine. So what do? I launch the application, which I mentioned as under precondition that it is already there. And I will enter washing machine and click on search. So user enters a keyword and click on search. So that is the user's action. So the step 1 is user's action. So all that under success scenario we are defining is user's action and system response. UA is for user's action and step 2 is system response. How the system has to respond? So the moment the user search for any product, system should present a set of search results and sponsored products, all of which include the name, short description, and the price. Name, short description, and the price. So that means that there will be a list of washing machines with sponsor product, all of which include the name, short description, and the price. What does user will do? Another user's action is user selects a product, double click on a product. What should system do? The system displays a product name, product page, including the product information, reviews, and related product. So the moment you click on one product, one washing machine image, it should present the product page, including the washing machine information, the reviews, and related products. For example, I liked it. So what should I do? The user's action, user click on add a product to the shopping cart, add to the cart. I'll click on that. What should be the post condition or the system response? Product should get added to the shopping cart, and the moment you open the shopping cart, you should be able to see that product out there. You should be able to see the product out there. So that way you see the user's action and the system response. User enters a keyword, click on search, and system presents a set of search results and sponsored product, all of which include the name, short description, and the price. User selects a product, double click on a product. System displays a product page including product information, reviews, and related product. User click on add the product to the shopping cart. So the post condition is that product should get added to the shopping cart. The product should get added to the shopping cart. So that way you have the name, precondition, and trigger also. Okay, anything like you can mention that any product requirement or requirement for a washing machine or something like that, you can put a trigger. And then you have the precondition, you have the success scenario. The steps that you mentioned here are the success scenario. So in the success scenario, main part is what the user is doing on the system and how the system is responding to user's actions. How the system is responding to user's actions. So ultimately, so obviously as a user, if I tell you that in order to transfer the fund, you need to do step-by-step things like this. Obviously, as a user who uses their like thoughts and their intellect, and they should be able to do the steps successfully. But ultimately, what we are developing a system. The system has to respond correctly when the user is doing something. So ultimately, what we are doing here, we are defining this part majorly. Step 2, step 4, and step 6 are the post condition. So we are defining this behavior as a BA, that the user is going to do this. The system has to be like responding like this. So the moment we say that a developer will develop the screen such that the user can search a product, the moment they search a product, like they should be able to see all the relevant products, the product description and so on, So similarly, the user would click on any product, the system has to respond with the product description and details and all that stuff, Is that clear?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So because this is very important to understand, so whenever we write down the requirement, so we as a BA, we need to define the user's actions and the system response, how a system should be responding to the user's actions. So guidelines for effective writing: use simple grammar. Always use simple grammar. Only one side is doing something in a single step. So now if you see, step 1 is user's action on the system. Step 2 is system response for the user's action. Step 3 is again the user's action. So that way, only one side is doing something in a single step. Right from an objective point of view. So every step should have some objective. So get the amount from the user, give him the money. No, this is not the right way. So if you want to withdraw the cash, so click on withdrawal, enter the amount. And again, the moment you click on withdrawal, how the system should be responding. And again, after entering the amount, that's how the system should be responding. That step-by-step things should be there. Any step should lead to some progress. Any step that you do that should lead to some progress. User click on the enter key. Does it change any status of the system? Not really. So after you doing some submit or like click go or whatever, so when the system status is going to change, that is need to be put down as a step. That means that any step that you do, that should lead to some progress, that should change the status of the system. So if you see the diagram here, actor would request for the money, that is withdrawal. System would ask for the amount, how much do you want to withdraw? Actor enters the amount, the system would produce the money. So that means that actor's action, system response, actor's action and system response should be in alternative steps. The complex diagram, no system or no actor, too many UI details, user types ID and password, clicks OK or hits enter. Clicks OK or hits enter. Clicks OK or hits enter. So user types ID and password, clicks OK or hits enter. So too many UI details also not required. You can easily say that user enters the credentials and submit. That should be enough. Very low goal details, user provides the name, user provides the address, user provides the telephone number. Is it going to change the status of the system? No. For example, you are filling in an application form online. You have the name, address, telephone number, and all the details, and a submit button. When the status will change, you enter all the details correctly and click on submit button. The status will change. But if you are writing the things like user should provide the name, Okay, system should accept the name. That is the step 2. User provides the address. That is step 3. And the system should accept the address fields. Step 4. If you are writing like this, is it going to change the status of the system in any way? Is it going to change the status of the system in any way? No. If it is not going to change the status of the system, so how do you write it? You can put it as user should be able to enter all the details and submit. All the details, details like name, address, telephone number, maybe like the date of birth, and all the details they should be able to enter and click on submit button. And click on submit button. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Others?
Kiran, what do you mean by mistakes? I mean,
No, where is that mistakes in the sense?
When you say these are common mistakes in use cases.
Okay, the common issues, right? When we write, so we will club two steps together, and put it as one single step, right? So that is one common issue, right? So the other is when you are not putting the terms or the sentence in a proper format. Now, if you see, every step has some objective here. Every step, the user's action, the user does on the system has some purpose, right? If you are trying to, if you are not putting in a right sentence format, for example, now if you see the third statement here, right from an objective point of view, that means every step should be having an objective. Get the amount from the user and give him the money. It doesn't give us any action or any response properly. So that is when the developer cannot understand it. If you put it like actor clicks on withdrawal and the system has to present a screen and it should ask for the amount, so that should be the system response. And the third step, actor enters the amount and click on enter or submit. And fourth step, the system has to produce the money. So that means that becomes more clear. Okay.
Use of appropriate words, you mean? I mean, because
Appropriate words as well as we should not club any two statements together or two steps together.
Okay. Got it.
So that will make things complex for the developer. Ultimately, why we need to detail all this information? This is for the developers to understand and develop the system accordingly.
So we don't do two commands in one time. One sentence is one command, kind of.
Yeah. So one proper step. So one proper user's action, and the system respond to that user's action, and again another user's action. That is how we need to be putting.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
So the one thing that is missing out here, so because here in the success scenario, we mentioned that it is written under the assumption that that everything is okay, no errors or problems occur, and it leads directly to the desired outcome of the use case. That means that like every step leads to desired outcome of the use case. That is how we define under the success scenario. But in reality, does every step lead to the next step? No. There can be possible errors, network issues, some other problems. Where are we handling that? Suppose we are trying to withdraw the cash from the ATM. So though everything is fine, the system network is not good, or maybe the system has other issues, software related issues. It is not dispensing the cash. When you are doing everything fine, then it is not dispensing the cash. So that may be one issue. There may be a network issue, internet issue, whatever. So where are we addressing that? where are we showing, like, because system by itself is not clever, right? We need to define that, okay, if there is any issue with the system, it has to throw this error. Bad gateway found, 404 network error, something like that. So in order for that to happen, so there is one section which talks about the alternative flows. Now, if you see the name, actors, trigger, precondition, postcondition, success scenario, and alternative flows. So alternative flows will tell you if there are any errors or if there are any alternative paths possible. So that would be defined under the alternative flows. For example, now if you talk about the errors, any network error occurred during steps 4 to 7. Any network error occurred during steps 4 to 7. 4 to 7 is just a random number. Don't go by that. It is just a random number. That means in between, if there is any network error, how the system has to respond. Any type of error occurred, how the system has to respond. Unusual or rare case errors. Credit card is defined as stolen. Sometimes the system gives this kind of message. How the system has to respond. It doesn't know how to respond. Endpoint, the system takes no more open steps to progress. Shortcuts, the user can leave the use case by clicking on the escape key. So let's say there are 10 steps, and after doing 4 or 5 steps, you are just clicking on escape. How the system has to respond. So obviously it will ask you, do you really want to leave? Do you really want to leave the page, or do you want to exit? Something like that it will ask you. So who has defined that behavior? The BA has defined that behavior. So if you are doing in between, you are, after doing certain steps, you are doing escape, clicking on escape, the system will right away ask you, do you really want to leave this page? So with OK or cancel options, if you click on OK, then you'll go back to the previous page. If you click on cancel, you'll stay back in the same page. So that kind of any alternative flows, any errors related issues, network related issues, that needs to be handled under the alternative flows. For example, there is a submit button. As part of the success flow, you will click on the submit button, but there is another button called as cancel button. So the user can click on cancel, the user click on reset, the user click on submit. So under success flow, you will make sure that the submit button is clicked and everything goes well. Under the alternative flows, we need to handle what will happen if the user click on cancel. What will happen if the user click on reset? So that will all be handled under the alternative flows. That will all be handled under the alternative flows. So that way, when you talk about a use case, it has all these entries: name of the use case, actors participating in the use case, trigger, like what would initiate the use case, precondition, the prerequisites for the use case, post condition, what would be the expected behavior after the use case is executed, success scenario, successful behavior, and what would be the alternative flows. So in case if there is like some issue in the success scenario, what should be the expected outcome? That will all be shown under the alternative flows. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Others?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in the next session, I will take an example. So we will go through that example. Then I'll let you know what you should be doing. Okay.
All right.
All
Yes.
right. Yeah. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow.
Okay. Kiran, bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran.
Bye.